So I would love to just sort of narrow the focus slightly in terms of when we're out there, when we're engaging with our clients, the face they see is the professional, right? The brand. And yet, as a human being, as an individual, there's a lot that we are dealing with. There's a lot that goes into you setting yourself up and psyching yourself up to be presentable to a client. And the first question that I would love to ask, and I'm talking slowly because I want to give all of you just time to sort of process what I'm asking, is we all have got an internal code of ethics, a code of conduct, something that we live our lives according to. And in all three of your cases, you are married, you've got children. Those are codes of conducts and belief systems and values that you pass on to them as well. What is the one sort of code that you think or that you believe defines you as an individual, that defines the decisions that you make, and that sort of manages and guides your day-to-day conduct? So I'm putting that out there. You don't have to, I'm not going to pick somebody specifically. So if that thought kind of pops in your head, please start the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I'll go. Jaap, do you want to go? Go for it.
No, you go, mate. You go.
I'll tell you why. It's not that I didn't think about your answer. It's as you were asking the question, I couldn't think of a different answer than what I already had, right? So without making things more complicated, for me, I think my compass has always just been authenticity. I keep saying, and I think we've had a few conversations where I say, I can't be anyone or anything else. This is who I am, right? And as much as you're a product of things before and as you grow and you learn, but there's still a sort of a core element that is who Jacques or Göran is or Inge is, right? And in the context of, I like to think of it in the context of customer engagement, and I do believe this is one of the reasons I can foster relationships really well, really quick, but authentic relationships, right? As much as we are transacting, right, and we're having to deal with each other because of a specific situation or business, etc. But there's also that element of there's an authentic relationship embedded behind that transaction, right? And I always feel people might not know if you're not being authentic. They might not be able to put a finger on it, but they know something's off, right? I always feel like people have this thing that something's off, but they don't know what it is. Jacques, something's about Jacques, but I don't get it, right? But if you're authentic and it's just as how you show up, it creates a level of predictability with and safety, if you will, with that individual. So for me, that's the only thing I go with. As much as there's a level of professionalism which you can handle it with, but embedded with the authenticity of who Felix is. So when I transact with you, it's as much as there's a business and whatever behind that is there's a human being, and that for me is the most important thing. That's how I navigate.
I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that. Jacques?
No, so for me, there's two driving trains of thoughts. So there's the self, and then there's the other party. And often those two work well together. Sometimes they collide, because on the one side, it is know who the F you are. This is me, like Felix is saying. Be transparent, be authentic. What you see is what you get. And the other part, which I found in tough times, has become more of the driver, or the wolf that I feed more meat and became stronger, is in the sense of who are you? I am first and foremost a protector and a provider to my family. That's what's getting me up in the mornings when my body is in pain. I feel like I have a hangover and I didn't have a sip of alcohol because you worked until 3 o'clock in the morning and you're waking up at 6 to wake the kids up for school. So, and it's that driving force. At the end of the day, you need to protect your family and you need to put food on the table and provide a roof over there. And that's been the driving factor for me. And that's the one that urges me on, pushes me when I can't anymore. And I look at those faces and I think of those things, and you think of just the responsibility. And then you look at our society of how many times men walk away from that. And that's why society kind of looks like it does, because men shy away from that heavy burden of responsibility that they created themselves. So it's owning that responsibility and trying to make the best of it. And I promise you, the feeling of reward of being loved back, having your hard work and efforts and sacrifice acknowledged in the simplest ways of a hug and a kiss and a sweet message, it speaks volumes. No matter how much money you throw at it or whatever, nothing can fill that need, that human basic need of feeling appreciated and loved. And that's the type of thing that spurs me on every day.
Sure, I love that. Göran, what's that driving force for you?
Well, the word I came to think about when you formulated the question was honesty, and I guess that's a bit parallel to what Felix said about authenticity, because whatever we do, whether it's business or whether it's family or other, it's about relations. And without honesty in a relation, without authenticity in a relation, it doesn't work. Sooner or later, it will break down. So I think that's really important. And that is, of course, one thing which is easy to say because it's also cultural. I live in the Netherlands since almost 30 years now. And the Dutch people are known to be very direct, very blunt, sometimes even. And that's one part of honesty, because I think it's also about being vulnerable or showing vulnerability. It's a lot you can put into the word honesty. But with developments, especially technological developments, that becomes more and more difficult to see what is really honesty, what is real and what is not. We have deep fakes now. We have politicians saying things that it wasn't actually the politicians. It was artificial intelligence making them saying something. So talking about what we've seen, and we're going to get more into this, but looking at how it was the past year and going forward, I think one of the things that will be a challenge is what is really honest and what is not.
Yeah, I just want to add, yes, dude, that's so, it's such a, first of all, thank you guys for all of your comments. Just realized that I have to up my game now in my response. I'm just playing. No, but on a real, it's so true, right? And for me, the concern is the blurring lines that start appearing, right? Whether you wanna do it in the context of the law, right, which is also a whole other kettle of fish. You wanna do it in the context of what would you call it? Moral, because that line.
No, type of thing, yeah.
Exactly, right? That compared, and even if you just want to use a timeline, and there's the reasons for this. If you go 50 years back, what those moral lines were versus what they are now, completely different, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. You look at your parents, you look at yourself, you look at the kids coming now, completely different way of thinking entirely as a basis, as a principle, right? To the point where I say, I don't even know how to get this point over to you, because it's not something I should be explaining to you. It should be something that is very clear as a principle, right? But it's again, it's how do you navigate the world that is now, right? Without without renegotiating who you are as an individual, or maybe also what you ought to be. And that's probably another kettle of fish, right? But yeah, just an additional comment to what you just mentioned.
Yeah, what I love about all three of your comments and the codes that you love by, is that, you know, it's elements and things that it's very difficult to teach in the corporate environment, even though we try very hard to teach emotional maturity or emotional intelligence. We try very hard to teach morality, authenticity, the kind of skills that we call these days as human skills. And the irony is, to your point, Felix, is why are we teaching why should we be teaching these things? These things, we should know these things, right?
Self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it makes a person sit back in terms of, and just touching on what you said, you run around deepfake. Absolutely, because these days, what's driving human behavior are the likes, are the number of followers that we have. If you have less than 100 followers, sorry, you're not relevant. I'm not going to talk to you, you know, and it's almost like this degradation of societal norms, to the point where it's a degradation of humanity. It's like we're stripping away what it means to be a human being, which is very dangerous, right? Because if I no longer see you as a human being, the repercussions of that kind of realization is just, it's far reaching into the negative space. And if I may kind of just speak to my personal code is, and I mean, over the years, it definitely touches on honesty and authenticity and just being real. But for me, it's always about, and I never had one word to explain this, but it was about, I want the person that I'm interacting with to feel seen, to feel heard, because I haven't always felt that, right? And just through the years, I've kind of whittled it down to one sentence where when I interact with somebody and I walk away, my mission is to have that person feel better off and to be a better version of who they were when I met them or before I met them. And I'm mindful when I say that, because I don't want to make it sound or come across as arrogance that, you know, I'm the life changer here, but it's about, was I able to treat that person with respect? Was I able to have that person feel like they are being seen, that they are being heard, like I've mentioned earlier on? And when I walk away, are they better for that? And so that has always been something that has defined what I do and how I interact with people. And when someone doesn't feel that way, I hope that they have the courage and the freedom to say to me, Inge, that wasn't cool, or I didn't, you know, I don't feel nice based on what you've just said to me. When I was in corporate, I used to, the teams that I was privileged enough to lead, I always made a point of giving them the permission to tell me that this is their preference to on how they want to be led. They're not comfortable in terms of what I've just said, or they have an idea. So creating almost that psychological safety for them. So I love the fact that I think amongst the four of us, there is that golden thread that is driving us. I mean, and just on that, based on your respective codes and a kind of moral compass, with 2023 on its side at the moment, and I can't wait to say goodbye to it, but I mean, have you, and this is kind of a multi-pronged question, but have you gentlemen experience clashes in terms of what society and what the world expects of you, just in terms of in your personal capacity, but also in your capacity as professionals, as businessmen? And how did you could you align that with your code, or couldn't you? Like, what did you do to sort of make sure that you stay on, that you don't veer off your moral code? Sorry, that's a very loaded question, but yeah, I think it's so important to know that, again, today in the world of deepfake and doing everything for likes, like, how authentic are we? Yeah.
Well, I think it's also an important thing to think about here is how do we measure things? Because you now talking a lot about emotions, getting a connections, being moral in your deeds and so on. And Jacques, you said that should be self-explanatory, having a certain moral code, moral compass. But isn't it one of the problems is that we're focusing too much on the monetary aspects of our lives, and it must be more, it must be better monetary going forward all the time, which makes that we sometimes comes to crossroads where that moral compass really needs to work. So I think, do we need, talking about deepfakes, talking about the developments technologically and so on, which hasn't got any feelings, do we need to revalue how we actually measure the things we find important? I mean, that also go on a corporate level. I heard about the company who, because they had a certain result before the pandemic, and haven't really come back to that levels of performance, financial performance, they started laying off people. And it was the first round, it was the second round, it was the third round. And the monetary gains they could make with that, what is the downside? Yeah, it's all the people who then are miserable, getting into personal problems and so on. So in an ideal world, I think we need to revalue or remeasure how we look upon things.
And I fully agree with you, Göran, and what I've found in my experience, it stems so much further than and originates from home, because you pick up how people engage in their social gatherings, in their corporate lives. What is their foundation built on? Was there a disruptive home, single parenting? All of those things, all of those fibers weave together to become this person, and then suddenly you're in a corporate setting where you now have a manager or a senior manager, director that's based his whole life on this, and that's how he makes things happen. And it not always aligns with your thinking, because now sometimes it lacks empathy, it lacks professionalism, it lacks a lot of the softer human elements sometimes, because I grew up hard, so therefore, and I look what I achieved, and this is how it works. And if I, unfortunately, it's not permitted, because if I had to take my shirt off, and it was in a corporate environment, you would see all the daggers in my back. And now that I am a supplier, if I take that same shirt off, you'll see all the tire marks on me, because I am often thrown under the bus, and not just rode over, sometimes reversed again and then go back again. So you are roadkill, like proper roadkill, highway roadkill. So and what it comes down to your basis, like Felix also mentioned, and yourself, the authentication of who you are, your belief system, going against the grain. This is wrong. This just makes sense. It's a gray area. However, let's rather play it on the safer side as opposed to on the non-compliant side. And I think for me, that's why the marriage with procurement for me was such a natural one, because it speaks to having those structures in place. And that's often how, and I mean, my clients today, you know, you engage with them, you teach them, you become a teacher. And Inge, I mentioned it previously, so many times I've educated some of my clients and some of my colleagues when I was in corporate to my detriment. They get the promotion, they give the job to someone else because I've now educated them. And it's a backhanded slap, you know, that type of thing. And so for me, in the type of person I am, I try and take the good out of it, even though the truth hurts, it bites. But then you just, I educated you, like you're saying, I made a positive impact on you, even to my detriment. That's for you. And that's now your moral compass that needs to guide you there. Like, shit, you know, Jacques actually guided me in this. Let me give him an opportunity. And at the end of the day, as a supplier, that's the only thing that you kind of ask for is this is what I can offer. However, I can offer you so much more. And that's often the toss and turn that we constantly have to work with. And like you also mentioned, if you are 2023 was, in all honesty, a shit year. I mean, I got my derriere handed to me on a silver platter. And I refused to take it gracefully. I pushed back many times, and I'm probably going to jump on forward now, Inge. And that happened. I hit my lowest beginning of November, and you know what? And then things start biting at you. The unethicalness, you know, all those things to make a buck, and not necessarily to make big bucks, just to put food on the table. No, desperation drives your actions. And I refuse to accept it until, you know what, your back is against the wall. There's nowhere else to go. And like the psychologist also says, you know what, you take it, you chew it, you work through it, you have your pity party, you do your acknowledgement, you do your balance sheet, pros and cons, and then you end up with an answer. Where to from here? I can either quit, and even in quitting, there's still many levels in quitting. So, or I can just, you know what, from this base, I can still rebuild myself. And then you pick yourself up, dust your derriere off, put it back on, and then you carry on. And then you work through it. And people, it depends on what you show people, how transparent you are. People can see I'm battered and bruised, but I will go on. I mean, I get compliments and people say, bro, how are you still smiling? And you know what, you're inspiration to me. And I'm looking at them as like, okay, you're sitting in your cushy job, 25th of every month, ting, you get your SMS, money's in the bank. I'm struggling, I'm on the 5th of the following month, I'm still trying to get paid here. And you looking at me, are you serious? And you know, it's those type of things, and it's like, okay, but clearly then it's the way you conduct yourself. And those are the small things that you have to take stock of when you're at your lowest. Take stock of, yes, because the big things is hard hitting. But when you're sitting there dazed and you're looking at yourself, it's like, okay, but this good thing happened, this good thing happened, this good. Okay, it's starting to outweigh. Okay, I can make this work. There's still life. There's still sparks there. Not dead. So then let's just take those sparks and then you carry on. But take stock of the good. Don't just focus on the bad.
I love that. It goes back to perspective, right? And I mean, Göran, when I touch on what you talked about in terms of measuring, is yeah, look, these things are intangibles, they're emotive, they're abstract, and yet these are the things that define us and define who we are. And I think depending on the value that those kind of things bring to our lives, and if you can attach some form of measurement, then you know, it's I think for you, not for society, not for people out there, to define that for you. And there was a meme that I shared on LinkedIn, I think, or on my Instagram account around, don't let people who haven't walked a mile in your shoes tell you how to tie your shoelaces, because opinions and advice are very free and you know, but people don't stick around when you are actually living the consequences of whatever advice they gave you or whatever opinion they gave you. And that is where I'm focusing my question on the moral code, because to your point, Jacques, when the times get tough, when the seas get rough, you have to decide, do I do something that comes easy and it might be immoral, or do I stick to my guns? There might be no payoff. I might not be able to measure the result of that decision, but gosh, I'll be able to sleep at night. I'll be able to look my children in the eyes and feel proud that I've stuck to my guns. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Felix, I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add onto what Göran and Jacques has said.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I couldn't have said it any better. And I think just to tie it back to your original very loaded question, is that there's a constant renegotiation that happens, right, throughout your life. And this is the case for me in 2023. Had you asked me this maybe a year ago, I maybe wouldn't have been able to answer you like this, but there's a constant renegotiation that happens as to, this is my boundary. This is what's happening in the workspace. Is it coming to overstep your boundary? Okay, let me redraw that again, right? For yourself and for your own sanity, but also for the organization, the people you work around with, right? I think it's almost then embedded in an understanding of what it is that's important to you, right? For me, important first and foremost, wife and my kids. The rest comes later, and that order is however it comes, right? Obviously now with my faith, wife and kids, but those for me are the first priorities, and that's why I do what I do. That's why I grind so hard. I'm sure Jacques, Göran, you guys can also attest to this. No, you get what I'm saying. Just saying now with the kids, that's always a massive motivator. And I'm not excluding you, Inge, but you know what I mean. It's just a relational point that I can relate on.
Yeah.
Is the and once that happens, right? For me, it's like, okay, cool. I'm understanding more and more about myself, and I'm learning and I'm relearning more about myself to say this is important to me. I need to draw this line, and once I draw that line, I'm firm about it, right? In addition to that, it's now me learning as to, I mean, we had this conversation multiple times, is where does Felix need to be? What is Felix's purpose, right? And it's probably a question you probably never pinpoint an answer, but I think you can, the more you ask, the more you probe, you can start getting closer to that, right? And that for me is that's what 2023 has been, is almost a discovery of, let me say, me and my purpose. And that also guided me in redrawing that line and constantly renegotiating that line, right? So again, renegotiating the line that's there, but not renegotiating who I am, what is important to me, right? And that for me is the fundamental that I try to guide myself. And that's the only sanity I would say made me come through this 2023. But yeah, heck of a year.
Yeah.